The Toronto Raptors are dominating the regular season better than they ever have before. Over the last few seasons, they have been a very good team, frequently finishing in the top 4 of the East and winning a playoff series or two. But Lebron James has continued to torture the Canadian NBA franchise and eliminated them in the playoffs over and over again. However, with the Raptors likely to finish first in the East, they might not have to face the Cavaliers till the Eastern Conference Finals, and there's no guarantee they will have to face them at all. Could this be the year that the Raptors finally break through and make it all the way to the NBA Finals? This video will assess this question and try to dive into just why the Raptors have been more successful than ever before this NBA season. One of the biggest reasons behind their success this year is the Raptors bench. They have one of the best benches in the league. The veteran presence and shooting of CJ Miles, combined with the youthful energy of Delon Wright, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Jakob Poeltl, and Norman Powell, has been an absolute hit for Dwayne Casey. Just looking at the advanced stats and you can see the impact. They all have a positive value over a replacement player. This means that they are all more valuable than the average NBA player at that position. Usually NBA starters will be positive in this stat, and good teams will have one or two guys who have a positive VORP off the bench. But to have every single rotation player with a positive VORP is almost unheard of, and shows just how good this bench unit is. The other interesting thing is Dwayne Casey largely uses them as a 5-man unit. Whilst he does slowly weave the substitutes into his starting lineup, he lets the 5-man bench unit play a lot of minutes together, which is quite rare amongst NBA coaches. Most NBA teams will have their stars and good players stagger the minutes with the bench to ensure that there is always a good offensive player on the court. Casey has largely foregone this tradition and has instead drilled his bench unit to play together in a way that is completely separate to the starters. In the past, Dwayne has been known to play an isolation-heavy style of basketball that works well in the regular season. He would run a lot of Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan isolation, and whilst these plays worked well, in the playoffs teams could double them and the Raptors weren't used to swinging the ball around the perimeter for easy shots. It appears that Casey has adjusted his strategy and the Raptors are moving the ball and running more off-ball screens and movement for their 2-star guards. But the starting lineup still relies on a little bit of isolation from Valanciunas, DeRozan and Lowry. This is completely fine, as they now go to this later in the shot clock when they get a mismatch or after they've created a little bit of separation for these guys. This results in slightly more efficient isolation, better beginnings to possessions, and less turnovers overall. But when the bench unit comes in, they play a completely selfless style of basketball that focuses on high energy, off-ball movement, and running a lot of pick and roll with Delon Wright and VanVleet and Poeltl and Siakam. Surrounding Wright and Poeltl with good 3-point shooters like Norman Powell, CJ Miles, and Fred VanVleet helps to create space for the pick and roll to operate. Wright and VanVleet both present different options in the pick and roll. VanVleet is a small and quick guard who can blow by smaller defenders, whilst Wright is incredibly long and quite athletic and uses his dribble hesitation moves well to create separation and finish strong above the rim. Both of them are having great seasons off the bench, averaging 8 points and 3 assists each, while shooting decent percentages from 3. But the true value lies in how well they all play together. Every player on the bench mob plays with a high energy and they are all selfless players. Siakam is also a good passer for a big man and averages 2 assists as well, while Poeltl, Miles and Powell all come close to 1 assist a game also. Frequently when watching the Raptors bench, you will see them push the pace and pass the ball to each other as they flip the ball from one another to create open lanes to the hoop. This selflessness creates so much value for an NBA team. Daryl Morey recently touched on the issue of selfishness within the NBA and how, unlike some other sports, sometimes a player's personal interest can affect the team's interest. This reflects the idea that players are paid for their own individual performances and not the performance of their team, creating a conflict of interest between what the player knows is best for them and what is best for the actual team. In baseball, for example, almost nothing a player does that benefits them will harm the team. If you throw a shutout innings or hit a home run, this is great for you as a player, but it is also fantastic for the entire team. Fielding well, running players out, and being in the correct position all benefits the player and the team at the same time. But in basketball, there are many instances where players make decisions that benefit themselves but harm the team in a large or small ways. The most obvious example is a player who thinks that they are better than they are or their role. This player might simply be asked to defend, cut to the basket, rotate off ball, and knock down 3-point shots. But they might think they are better than Michael Jordan. So every time they touch the ball, they take it to the post, go at their defender one-on-one in isolation, and try to score. Now sometimes they might succeed and manage to score, but imagine that they have LeBron James on their team instead. The highest value expected points possession likely comes from just having LeBron run pick and roll or attack in isolation or post up himself. But the key idea is the player that just wants to be like Mike dramatically decreases the expected points per possession every time he runs one of these plays instead of LeBron. There are more subtle ways that a player can negatively affect their team as well. For example, a lot of defensive reputation is based upon steals and blocks, instead of better advanced statistics such as defensive blocks plus minus, and effective field goal percentage of players that they are guarding. So a player could gamble more on defense and attempt to steal or block the ball far more than they are meant to. For example, a player could come over and double team every time someone manages to get into the paint. This will increase the amount of times they manage to block their shot, but it'll also leave their man open in the paint for an easy pass off or fantastic offensive rebounding positioning. So when the player doesn't manage to block the shot, it is creating a much higher expected point per possession for the other team. A lot of the time, the better play would be to stay hedged between your man and the driving player and try to affect the lane to the hoop without giving up defensive rebounding positioning or leaving a player wide open. I could and might make an entire video on this concept, but you can see how there are decisions that players can make whenever they are on the court that might appear to be the right thing for the team, but really aren't and only benefit them. And the Raptors bench simply do none of this. Every time I watch them, I am blown away by their effort, positioning, and communication on defense and their selflessness on offense. It is a fantastic brand of basketball, and I expect it will do them wonders in the playoffs. It has also allowed for the starters to play far less minutes a game. DeRozan is leading the team with 34 minutes a game, Lowry plays 32, Ibaka 27, and Jonas and OG Anunoby play around 20 a game. These low minutes mean the players are fresh, and the Raptors have suffered very few injuries this season, and they should have a fit and healthy squad come playoff time. But as good as the bench has been, it is still DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry that are the stars of the team. I made an earlier video on DeRozan and how effective his game has become this season, but he is truly a joy to watch this year. Last season he did score more points a game, but this year he is still scoring 24 points a game more efficiently, shooting more threes and passing the ball a lot more. This has resulted in 5 assists per game and is perhaps one of the best examples of selflessness improving a player. Last year, it was a little predictable that DeMar would take a shot, and he would frequently shoot over double and triple teams in the post and paint. Now, he still takes some of these shots, but they are a lot less frequent and he is passing a more out of double and triple teams. The willingness to pass forces defense to have to consider if they will double, as it is now a lot less effective of a defensive play. And the Raptors role players have been knocking down the shots to make teams pay when they double DeMar or Kyle. Jonas Valanciunas has finally added the 3 to his game as well. Prior to this season, he had only ever attempted 4 shots in his 5 years from deep, but this season he has already attempted 56 and made 25 of them, at a rate of 44.6% from deep. I'd like to see him continue to take them and maybe even make more of them, as it allows the Raptors to have an inside offensive and defensive rebounding presence who can still space the floor when needed. And so Ibaka has also really settled into his role and is playing good defense, rebounding, hitting threes, and mid-range jump shots. He was given a big contract for 3 years, and it looks like he will be able to play well throughout the entirety of it. But my favourite surprise contribution comes from OG Anunoby, the Raptors rookie who they took 23rd in the draft. I absolutely loved OG in the draft and thought that he should have been taken much higher than 23rd. But the Raptors will count their blessings with OG. He's an incredibly athletic small forward who can defend every single possession on the court incredibly well and has shown the ability to shoot threes and pass the ball a little bit. The Raptors had tried DeMar Carroll for ages at the 3 position, but he lacked defensively and sometimes tried to do a little bit too much with the ball. OG is perfect for this role as he is selfless, makes a huge impact defensively, and for the most part he does the right thing offensively every time he touches the ball. So this Raptors team has a great starting lineup, a great bench, and one of the best shooting guards in the entire league. But how far can they go in the playoffs? Earning the 1 seed for the Raptors is key for them, as it'll mean they likely don't have to play Cleveland or Boston until the Eastern Conference Finals. But the East is stronger than it has been for a while, and I think that all of the teams in the playoffs will be tough. Miami have Dragic and Whiteside, and a team of great role players and one of the best coaches in the league. The Bucks have an incredibly scary team of long defenders that get out in transition, and the return of Jabari Parker makes them even more dangerous. And then, Philadelphia have some of the best young talent in the league with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Each of these teams would be so tough for the Raptors, and I don't think any series in the East will be a foregone conclusion. but the Raptors should beat all of them. They have the experience and the bench depth over all of these teams mentioned above, and losing to any of them would and should be seen as a failure. Then they would likely play the Washington Wizards in the semifinals, who I also think they should beat, and find themselves in the Eastern Conference Finals against either Boston or LeBron and the Cavaliers. Against Boston, I think the series would be a genuine 50-50 flip, as I think Boston have slightly more talent and a better coach, but home game advantage for the Raptors tips it back to their favour, as well as long-term team consistency. But against LeBron, most would rule the Raptors out against him. Not this year. Not for me. I'd give the Raptors about a 30% chance of stealing the series from the Cavaliers. The team doesn't have the same chemistry and time playing together as previous years, and Kevin Love hasn't yet returned from injury. There is a chance that LeBron could be beaten for the first time in 7 years in the East. But it is still LeBron. He is still the best player in the world, and betting against him in the East would be lunacy. But I think every team in the East would take a 30% chance against LeBron. And DeMar, Lowry, Dwayne Casey, and his merry bench will be coming at the King with full force. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for NBA videos every Thursday and Sunday.